Welcome to Every Step Podcast. I'm Krystyna Weston.
And I'm Judith Beck.
Every Step is the podcast where career and life meet.
With a new guest every episode, we explore the gutsy issues affecting everyone in the workplace.
Welcome back, Elly Johnson, for part 2 of our conversation around truth, deception. And today we're going to dig a little bit more into the issue of how do we create a culture of candour, both at work and also in our personal lives? And how do we create the kind of relationships that we want to have and the environment that we want to have? So, Elly, I'm going to throw straight to you.
Straight into the deep end.
Straight into the deep end.
Big topics. And last time we were together, the time flew and we just kept on talking after we stopped recording. So let's see what we can get through today. Truth and lies and honesty, they're such huge topics that everybody is interested in some way, shape or form. And we are going to talk about creating a culture of candour in your organisation, in your teams and in your personal relationships too. First thing I want to say on that is if it was easy, everyone would be doing it already. And the fact that a lot of organizations, many organizations and many relationships don't have a culture of candour tells us there must be something tricky about it. There must be something a little bit complex about it. And that's what I want to unpack today. What's so hard about creating this culture of candour? And I think we've all got stories and we've all got examples of why it is difficult. And one of the things that is difficult for people to hear sometimes is feedback. And so that whole truth-telling element of creating the culture of candour, I want to give you some feedback. I want to tell you some truth. People get defensive. People don't take feedback well. No, so there's a whole bit that we need to unpack in relation to feedback. And that can be in our personal lives as well as our professional lives.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had some issues happen in my personal life recently, which could have equally happened in a work environment. And I think I used the phrase, I've been cancelled by a friend because of the feedback. And it is tricky. I think a number of us, I think both at work and in our personal lives, I think many of us are afraid to give feedback because we don't want to make waves. It's like it's easy just to dismiss the behavior or dismiss a comment and kind of go, well, that's not the heart of who that person is. That wasn't their intention. But then it just keeps happening over and over and over again. And at some point, that person actually does need to hear the feedback. And I guess the challenge is how do we deliver it in a way that allows that feedback to land with the intention that we have for that feedback?
We can't take responsibility for how it lands on somebody. We can take responsibility for how we deliver the feedback. And that takes some thought to understand human behavior and understand that people do get defensive when they hear something that doesn't put them in the best light. And when we get defensive, then we get triggered. When we get triggered, we want to argue back and tell somebody what's wrong with them. So we can't take responsibility for how it lands on someone else. We can certainly take responsibility for how it lands on us. And when we talk about feedback and people being truthful with us, we need to ask ourselves, do we make it safe for people to be truthful with us? How do I respond if someone is truthful? What is my reaction? What is my knee jerk? What is my reaction? And it only takes one occasion for somebody giving me some feedback and me blowing top or getting triggered and saying, well, that's BS, or you do this, and then we're off into an argument. And I have signaled to that person it's not really a safe environment for you to give me that feedback, because I'm either not willing to hear it, I'm not emotionally mature enough to hear it, all of those things. And I think in your case, Krystyna, you're talking about your friend. Was that a blind spot that friend had when you gave feedback?
I suspect it was. I mean, this is a very dear friend who I love, and I hope we can rekindle the friendship. but it was important. She got very upset with me over an issue, and I tried to ring her and she wouldn't talk to me. So I don't like to respond via email. I don't think that's I think that's a very dangerous way of communicating when emotions are heightened. But she wouldn't take my calls. She wouldn't speak to me. So I wrote her an email and gave her some feedback about how the interactions had landed on me, because she was very, very cross with me about something I had done, and it was never my intention to hurt her. Mm. But I think when I actually wrote the email and I tried to write from the perspective of my intention and how I wanted, it's just a difficult one to talk about because there's so much emotion caught up in it. When I actually wrote back to her, I think she was very confronted because it was in her blind spot. I think the information I'd shared with her came as a big shock. Mm. And that's, and no one wants to hurt anybody. Like, I think a lot of us avoid giving feedback because we want to maintain friendships, and we kind of go, well, our friendship's bigger than that. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect. None of us are perfect. Mm. So, but I think there comes a point where we actually become dishonest with ourselves if we allow certain behaviors to continue with people at work or in our personal lives. Mm. And then we're dishonest with ourselves because we're putting ourselves second, or we're not managing our boundaries well enough. So I think with the benefit of hindsight, that bit about learning how to communicate in a way where you can grow and move on rather than throw your toys out of the sandpit and go, actually, I'm not playing in this sandpit now. I need time out. I'm not playing with you. And that happens at work as well.
And I think the difference with from a work and a personal point of view is that in a personal situation, you're hurt because you've invested in this relationship for a long term. And in a work situation, you're more than likely angry when you've got that feedback and you're thinking, well, what do you know? Don't tell me. Mm-hmm. And that's not how I see it. And that's where that trust is important, because if your boss is someone who you don't trust and you don't respect, you're not going to take that feedback as well as someone who might go, okay, they know what they're talking about. And I think that, one of the things that is important is for managers and companies to learn that they need to be able to build that trust, and how they do that is probably through consistency of behavior.
100%.
And to be able to, one, practice what they preach. I've been getting a lot of feedback from people who have taken new jobs, and the person who interviewed them was all nicey, made all these promises, and we've got flexibility here. We're family friendly. This is a great place to work for. You've got a parking space. And then when they get into the role, well, family friendly means a pizza party at Christmas time with your partner, right? And flexibility means maybe once in a month you might be able to leave early. So
10 minutes early.
10 minutes early.
And parking means first in, best dressed kind of thing. And that's where, when people start new jobs, they lose trust. They start to lose trust very quickly if they don't get off on the right foot, and if the company doesn't put their money where their mouth is. In other words, they've overpromised and underdelivered. That person from then on, all of a sudden, every time they see that person, they don't believe what they say. Mm-mm. And that in any company or relationship, at the end of the day, you've got to build that trust.
That's it. And that culture, when we talk about the culture of candour in an organization, that it goes right back to it starts at recruitment. Well, it starts in other areas too, in your advertising, in your promotions, in how you talk about the organization. So, but the recruitments are really important, and there's so much focus on interviewees, candidates telling lies and not being completely truthful, but a lot of hiring managers and recruiters are full of it, and they're misleading people, as you say, and then people get into that job, wow, I've got this job and they've got this and they've got that, and it's not the truth. So for those hiring managers and recruiters out there that want the truth from people, you need to start actually speaking the truth and giving the truth too. That's creating that culture.
Because whitewashing doesn't help anybody, does it?
No, it's gonna end in tears for somebody.
And you know what? A lot of those managers, they might, I used to tell people, because they would have this relationship with their manager, and then their manager would say, yeah, go ahead and do that. That sounds like a great idea. And then they go off and do it. And then 4 months down the track, when whatever it was that they thought they got approval for wasn't working out, the manager will go, I never said you could do that. Mm. And then the person who's go, well, we had that conversation in the hallway, because nothing, and I used to say to people, get it in, confirm.
Put it in writing.
But the reality was that person being, were they lying to them? A lot of times they would forget. They forgot, and they actually, and I'd say to them, look, you got to remember, a lot of these managers and people have 25,000 other things on the go. You've spoken to them in the hallway, got them to agree to something, then off you go. They forget, and then they literally go, I didn't say that.
Mm. The more stressed you are, the more under stress you are, whether it's in your personal life or in your corporate life, you're going to misread signals, you're going to forget, you're going to misinterpret. You're going to bring your own stuff to the room.
Yeah, and your memory can play tricks on you too. So you can conveniently forget, or you can believe that this is the truth for you. Like, I absolutely said that, or I absolutely didn't say that. But our memory can absolutely play tricks and fill in gaps for us. There's people in prison now that shouldn't be there, that are there because of witness testimony where they absolutely believed that was the person, or they absolutely believed that they saw this or heard that, but it didn't happen. And there's people getting out of jail and with DNA testing now that were put into jail based on someone's very, very clear memory. So our memory plays tricks as well. We have to keep that in mind.
Well, one of my favorite sayings is from Seinfeld, and where George goes, "It's not a lie, Jerry, if you believe it."
Well, that's a whole nother conversation.
But there's a lot of people in the corporate world that believe their own stuff, right? Yeah. That's not true.
That's true. But clear communication is so important when we're talking about creating. We have to create that culture of candour. We have to have conversations about what is a culture of candour first. That's your starting point. So an organization can't put up some new shiny organizational values on the wall and say, look, here's our values, everybody do this. And most organizational values or mission statements, you'll see the word honesty somewhere in there. So they stick it up on the wall. What does that even mean,
though? What does that even mean?
That's it. You have to actually, you have to dissect, you have to unpack that, and then you have to start from a the very beginning of unpacking that and training people around, if this is our end goal and this is where we think we are now, what are all those steps in between that we need to get to there? And there's a whole lot of steps, and there's a whole lot of awareness, and there's a whole lot of individual growth, and there's a whole lot of leadership and management growth and communication growth. It's like,
it's complex.
It's really complex, and you can't turn, like, think of a big ship that needs to turn the opposite direction, like a big cruise ship. It doesn't just go whoop like a little speedboat. It takes a while to turn around, and so too can an organizational culture, or the culture in a relationship. Like, what is okay, what is not okay when it comes to truth and lies? Because we all tell lies. Sorry, everybody, to tell you.
We do.
We all tell lies.
By omission.
Every now and then I get people push back on that, go, well, I don't. I'm a really honest person. But most people will put their hand up and say, I'm an honest person. When I stand on a stage in front of hundreds of people, hands up who's an honest person, pretty much everyone puts their hand up. But all of us have lied. So are we a liar? Do we label someone a liar when they have told lies in the past? Or because we should all then be wearing t-shirts saying I'm a liar.
And we tell lies to protect people sometimes, or we omit information to protect people from.
That's right.
From harm or from hurt, from feeling.
Well, there's
hurt.
others lies, meaning I'm protecting someone else, but there's self lies to protect myself too. So there's different types of lies.
Absolutely.
But we need to unpack that. We need to get people talking about the difficulty in telling the truth and speaking the truth and hearing the truth and feedback. And that's the starting point for organizations, to start a conversation. Let's start unpacking it. Let's hear what your boundaries are. Let's hear what your definitions are. Let's hear what your fears are. Let's hear what your interpretation is. That's the starting point, just to have, and even those conversations can be uncomfortable.
Yeah. And how do you have those conversations where everybody's boundaries are different? Everybody's level of sensitivity is different. Mm-hmm. Everybody's perspective and the stuff that they come into the room with is different.
Yeah. And you're right. Some people are more sensitive because of their background. Perhaps they've trusted in the past and they've been hurt. So, that trust thing is so big and so vital and so important to them because their world's been shattered in some way, shape or form in the past. So they're maybe more skeptical, or they've got their barriers up and their boundaries up. And other people are more open and more emotionally mature and aware. So you've got such a mix of experiences and background and level of education and maturity and emotional intelligence and all of those things. So it's starting the conversations. It's actually just start the conversations. So
absolutely. And it really is up to the leaders from the top 100%. Down to set.
They have to lead. They have to lead by example.
People will see, and if a leader doesn't admit to a mistake, or they don't apologize for something, or they try to sweep something under the rug or whatever, then the people who are watching, and right down from the younger ones up, will go, that's acceptable behavior. But if they, do the right thing, that's how they start building the culture of trust. And the reason people don't speak up within organizations is because they've witnessed other people in the past speaking up and getting shot down. But if they would witness people actually speaking up and other people encouraging them and helping them, then other people would think the same way. And it's really, we are talking about it's hard, but it can be simple. It could be simple.
With the process. Yeah.
With the process, it could be simple if people would just look at it from a human point of view. How are we going to make this environment safe to the point where everybody feels confident and comfortable speaking up, to the point where they know they're not going to get knocked
repercussion
down.
Repercussion. Yeah. So but to understand what people's fears are, what are they most afraid of, and then to mitigate those fears and talk through those fears. And when somebody, as you say, is courageous enough to speak up, whatever that is, like there's so many different things that somebody could speak up about, but they do it, then that has to be noticed, and it has to be not rewarded, but it's rewarded in a way, like acknowledged. And it is rewarded. It is rewarded. Thank you for being honest. Thank you for speaking up. Thank you for having the courage to step into that uncomfortable space. So that's really important too, and to address issues promptly. So when things are not meeting the guidelines around that trust and honesty, to address them properly. Don't let them fester and grow, and as you said, sweep things under the carpet.
Oh, because when you let them fester, that's when you start conjuring up all kinds of things that are going on. And then you think, oh, they're doing this and they're doing that, and I'm going to leave this organization because of this, that, and the other thing, right? Yeah. And the other thing that I think we need to talk about as well is the employee needs to know how to build trust with their manager. So it goes both ways. If you want to be looked at within your organization of someone who can do things and get things done, you've got to build that trust up with your colleagues and with your your manager as well, so that they look at you as someone who's dependable.
And to realize that trust is really fragile too. Humans, it can take a while to build trust, but take just one action or one word for trust to be shattered. And it's really hard to win back. We talked in the last time we got together, we talked about the truth default and how we default to believing people. And so we should, because we need that skill to get through our lives socially. We can't go around not trusting everything and everybody. But when somebody does lie to us and it's found out, or somebody does say they're going to do X, but they do Y, then the trust is broken, whether it's broken a little bit or broken big. If it's broken, it's really hard to get that, but not impossible, but hard to get it back. So we want to work to creating that culture of candour and recognizing we need to do what we say we're going to do. And if we give our word on something, then we act on that. If we're unable to follow through on that, then we explain, I did say this, but I can no longer fulfill that. And here are the reasons why. And really, really clear communication. Don't leave people in the dark like some of our politicians do. Right, Judith?
We were talking about that earlier, for the benefit of the audience. Here in Australia, the overseas audience may not understand, but there's a thing called the Commonwealth Games, if you're not part of the Commonwealth. And Australia was going to be the host in Melbourne, and the powers to be all of a sudden came on the news and said, we're canceling it. And I'm not apologizing, and it's going to cost too much. And so we were talking about this earlier about there's a way to give a message. And sometimes you have to make a hard decision. It's costing too much, better to get out now. But I actually do apologize for the inconvenience that this decision is going to cause multiple small businesses and businesses throughout Australia. And I think that kind of a message would have been so much better for the people. They're still going to be disappointed, but they're going to go, okay, well, and give some reasoning, for goodness sakes. I mean, come on, really? Not that. Right. It was originally 2 billion and now it's 7 million, but
what happened?
And then no one believes that, because the magnitude of the price explosion was so great. There's questions around all of that, and then it gets everybody questioning about, was the whole decision based on somebody's ego as opposed to the facts, and who lied to who in the decision-making process. So the whole thing is like, oh, we just don't trust them.
And what trust?
There's too much dark, isn't it?
What trust will anybody else have in the future who wants to hold an event like that? They're going to go, okay, hold on a second. I'm going to because that's people's livelihood. And if you commit, I just think, anyway, I'm not bitter.
I think you are. But I mean, when we talk about politicians all around the world, then when you already have formed your opinion, it doesn't really matter what somebody does. You're not going to trust them anyway, because you're already operating off that. The bar is already, I don't trust that person. So that's already happened long before, for whatever reason. And then that can happen at work, that can happen in our personal relationships, in our professional relationships with our clients and customers as well. So sometimes it's out of our control because they don't trust our organization because of something that happened before, but they're actually looking at me, and I'm the organization.
But is it retrievable? Can you retrieve it? Like, if you don't trust, like in that case, so how long does it take for someone to reestablish trust? Have you had any kind of experience where you've seen, where something hasn't happened, but all of a sudden someone has to, what do they got to do?
Well, big brands have destroyed their brand. I mean, in the moment, their brands have been destroyed either through things they've done incorrectly, things that individuals have done. So organizations do build their brands. It takes time, doesn't it?
It does. And it's the brand in the sort of marketing division and the comms division, and everything needs to work on that, but it's the humans that suffer for it. So if I'm a sales rep for an organization and that organization has ripped people off and done the wrong thing, people are going to see that I'm the face of that. Now, yes, through through a lot of work and a lot of relationship building with my customers, I can help to build back that trust, but they're really building the trust in me. They still might say the organization and the brand stinks, but they're starting to build the trust in me. Now, how do I do that? Well, I need to do what I say I'm going to do. Because it's a sketchy ground at that stage, isn't it? They're like, okay, I'll give you a chance. And then if I say I'm going to do X and I do Y, little things, then straight away they're going, yep, I knew it. Elly's the same. She's just like them all. So we really need to be impeccable with our actions and our words.
So what do you think some of the things are that employees would do that would damage the trust? So what are some of the behaviors that you've seen over the years that people working within organizations that we might be able to share that causes a manager not to have trust in someone?
It causes a manager not to have trust in an employee? Yeah. I remember I worked years ago for Eveready batteries, Eveready and Energizer batteries, and there was one of our senior account managers, and she got caught out not going to the customer regularly as she was supposed to. She kept on having days off, but she'd log that she went to this customer, and she ended up getting caught out, and she lost her job for it. And it's fascinating. I always think about that, and it's such a long time ago, and I think, how did you ever think that was going to end well? How did you ever think that having these extra days off and saying that you were visiting this customer and not visiting this customer, like, how did that sit okay with you? And how did you think that was ever going to end well? Because when we make those decisions, or we take those shortcuts, or we skirt around the truth, most of the time it's going to come out. Most of the time you're going to come unstuck, even in relationships, and someone's cheating and they're getting away with it for a year and 2 years and 3 years and 5 years.
Catch up with them.
Yeah, most of the time sometimes you get away with it, but if you're getting away with it, what's the toll on your own body too? What's the toll on your own mental health? What's the toll on your nervous system?
So I think let's come back to communication, because that's kind of at the heart of everything. And in terms of truth telling, we've all kind of not spoken the truth for one reason or another to protect someone. And that's also being, you may not think it's dishonest, but it's on the spectrum of dishonesty. How do we manage our communication so that, let's say in the workplace, for example, we're getting a lot of feedback from people saying, oh, I can't possibly give ABC person, or whatever, this person feedback, because they might take it the wrong way, and I might be up for a bullying charge or a whatever. Yeah. And there seems to be a lot of conversation around that, where people are actually now afraid to give constructive feedback. And we've had some younger people in their sort of younger than us, in their 30s, saying we used to have situations post-project where we'd all sit around and give feedback about how the project went, and now the leaders don't want to do that because they're afraid of repercussions. And look, that can't be good either. So what are the practical things that we can do, and what are the skills that we need to have so that we can create an environment where it is safe to give and receive constructive feedback without people feeling annihilated?
It's like creating that charter and the culture is really the definition of culture. My definition is the way we do things around here. So really thinking about what is the way we do things around here, but don't do it at the CEO level, coming to a meeting and going, this is the way we do things around here. Like, there needs to be investment in training and awareness. Like, at the moment, I'm rolling out a leadership program for an organization. And one of the things we talk about is the Johari window. And just that awareness, I see people having light bulb moments and aha moments, because we talk about people's open space. They communicate, you know something about me, I know it about me, my hidden space, I know it about me, but I don't want you to know about me. And the blind spot area is something that you know about me, but I don't know it about myself. I'm just not aware of maybe how I show up, or how my strong personality kind of upsets people sometimes, or how my body language comes across. And so I think that for organizations that are really proactive about this, it's really having some consistent training and education across the organization. And even little things like that, where someone is presented a tool that they haven't seen before, or they have seen before but never taken notice of it, and realize that we all have blind spots. And the biggest gift that somebody can give you is to point out the blind spots that you have. But we have to be willing to let that in. We have to be willing to be a truth attractor and not repel it, not push it away, and welcome it. So that it starts with conversations like this. And it starts with a long-term strategy as you turn that ship around to bring some extra training and awareness into organizations and have different conversations, different than they're having now. Talk about how we tiptoe around things. Talk about how we tread on eggshells. Like, let people actually get that out. Talk about why that happens. Talk about human psychology. Talk about defensiveness. Talk about it, but have a consistent long-term plan. Don't just don't do one training course and go, yay, off we go.
Got that certificate. Yep.
Yeah, got the certificate. We've got a culture of candour. You have to have a longer term strategy, and you have to say, right, we're here. We want to get over there. We're going to turn the ship around slowly, and we're going to put our arms around our people and nurture them on that journey.
Yeah, and it's kind of from the inside out and the outside in. So the organization needs to help create that environment, but the individuals also need to take personal responsibility for their own personal growth, so that they grow from the inside out, so that they're ready to also be part of a culture of candour.
That's it. Like, work out what is the end result. What do we want our culture to be? What do we want to be able to say, this is the way we do things around here? And really get that right. But then recognize when we're so far from that, most organizations are so far from that. Some have done a lot of work on it. Some have done next to nothing. And some are actually probably doing the opposite of work on it. They're putting brick walls up so that they'll never get there.
Well, it's probably even harder these days, because if they're all over the place and they're not in one area, they're not sort of having that collaboration on a daily basis to build that trust. So companies will have to be a lot more intentional about getting people together and getting to know people and understanding the different, the different needs and wants of people too, because someone who's just coming into their first job needs something different than somebody who is, mid-career and above. So they need more nurturing or mentoring or.
And one of the big topics that's out there at the moment is people coming back into the office, and the struggle that organizations are having with getting people to come back into the office. Now, there's people that are not going into the office on certain days and pretending or saying that they're not coming because they don't feel well, because they've got a bit of a cough. But the fact is, they just want to work from home that day. So sometimes we actually are pushing truth away because they feel that they have to lie about why they're working from home because they don't want to go into the office that day. So imagine creating an environment where I could say, I just don't want to come in today. I want to work from home. I could have 1,000 reasons why, or I could just feel like working from home today. And as long as my productivity is there, I think that's a great thing. But instead, I don't believe truth. Remember, we talked about the truth default, and that if truth will get me there, most of the time I'll tell the truth. But in this case, I think if I tell the truth, you'll say, come on, Elly, come into the office. So therefore,
letting the team down, and then there'll be a guilt thing. And
I'll
it's
say,
like 3 days a week, you're meant to be in the office 3 days a week.
Exactly. So you're actually making me lie. Or no, you're not making me lie. I'm choosing to lie. But you're actually increasing the likelihood that I'm going to have to tell you BS. Because...
But then I'm not going to have trust in you. I'm not going to have as a manager.
But you won't know. You won't know that I'm not being truthful. I'll tell you.
Eventually,
yeah,
eventually, you're going to get caught out. And the thing is that the working from home or whatever, when the company goes, but they've made a decision. It's going to be 3 days. It's going to be flexible. The whole thing is again, with that structure, whatever it is, they've got to be consistent, and it's got to be something that works for everyone. And if it doesn't work for someone, and rather than lying about coming in or out, find another job, because the company has already decided that this is the culture and this is what we want. And if 99% of the people are on board, but only a few because, I don't want to work from home today, so I'm just going to tell them I don't feel well, that's going to come back and bite them later on. So,
but even before all of this, people used to say, we couldn't be honest before about having to pick our kids up from school, or our kids were unwell. So we used to make up stories 10 years ago.
That goes back to that family friendly thing. Like, don't tell people in an interview and stuff like that, we're family friendly. And, flexibility when, women have to pick up or drop their kids off, women and men, partners have to drop their kids off by a certain time. Sometimes they can't get to those early morning meetings. And then all of a sudden, if they've got if you want them to come in for meetings outside of the norm, when they've already planned, anybody who has kids will understand what the heck I'm talking about. If you've already planned your drop off and your pickups, and these days having extra support out there is not all that easy. And then someone says, I want you to come in for a 7:30 meeting. And then you go, I can't, I'm not going to be there. I can only get there by 8. And they make you feel guilty, or they make you feel like, you're a villain if you walk in 10 minutes late when you've already told them, well, that's not family friendly, is it? And it's going to mean that person or those people are always going to go, well, it's not family. It's not, and it's like what you were saying, Krystyna, people did things like that before, where they called in sick before working from home and did that. But eventually, if people are doing that, my view, looking back on recruitment, the ones that were doing things like that weren't happy in their job. They did, and they could have actually been working in an environment where everybody else in that organization loved it, but that person didn't. So, they didn't. And big companies can have a great culture of loyalty and trust, but you might just be the one unlucky person that reports to the person who isn't like everybody else, and that makes your life miserable.
Yeah. And the bigger the organization, the more personalities there are in there. So that's why it's so complex. Humans are complex creatures. We can't just paint everyone with the same brush and say, there you go, behave like this. But I think in 2023 and beyond, that culture of candour and the desire for truthfulness and honesty and safety and psychological safety and all of those things, that a lot of those are words that we haven't heard a lot of in the past, that we're going to hear a lot of in the future. People are demanding different things.
Agreed.
But we also need to take responsibility for our own responses. Like, if you expect people to be honest, if you expect people to, and your leaders and your colleagues and people to be truthful, then you have to take responsibility for how you react and how you respond. Because if you push truth away, or you make it hard for people to be truthful with you, well, that's on you.
Yeah, very true.
Exactly right. You have to ask yourself, okay, if you're working for someone and all of a sudden you don't trust them, you have to sort of say, why don't I trust them? Reflect on what it was at that moment that happened. Could I have asked more questions? Did I perceive it incorrectly?
Yes.
Maybe they were having a bad day. Maybe they snapped at me or said something that's not their normal. And so I took it wrong, or maybe that corresponds. And the only way you're going to find out if you have a conversation with them.
All roads lead to conversation. Everything we've been talking about in the last episode and this one is all roads lead to conversation and awareness.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Exactly. And if you think someone's not telling you the truth, we've all been down that track, because, like, people will sometimes only tell you what they want you to here. You have to start thinking deeper. And if you're getting the little twitches of like something's not right here, keep asking more questions. Keep asking more about, I used to say, like when I was dealing with clients and when I'd go out and try to get business from a new client, if they didn't ask me questions, they're not interested. They just said, oh yeah, this sounds great. Here, give me the proposal, whatever, and then we'll get back to you. I was like, nah, I'm never going to hear from this person again. I wanted the ones to keep asking me questions until they stopped asking me questions, because then I knew that any doubt that they had in their mind about me or the company or the consultants or whatever, I've been able to overcome. And that was them trying to build the trust in me. Can this company and this person do this job? And it's the same thing when we go out and see clients. All people want to deal with people they trust and they know who can deliver what they said they were going to do. So whether it's the employee who's working for a manager, the manager just wants to know, can I trust this person? Will they do what they said? The employee wants to know, will this company offer and do what they said they were going to do when I took this role? Right? It's a two-way street.
It's so nuanced. It's so nuanced because my truth may not be your truth. We might be both in the same situation, and the way I perceive what's happened is quite different to how you've perceived what's happened. And each of those experiences are true for us.
For you, yes.
But it's not true. But if I heard your truth of what you experienced and it wasn't either my intention or my truth of what happened, wow.
And that's where the emotional maturity, emotional maturity around conversation comes into it. So to be able to be tolerant of somebody else's view and perspective and truth. So I say to you, Krystyna, I want to understand you better. I want to understand your perspective. I want to understand the lens from that you look through. So I need to be a good listener. So active listening is so, so important here, to not jump into judgment, to just listen to understand, seek to understand. And questions are your power tools to keep going deeper. Like, okay, explain that to me. Why do you feel like that? Can you give me more insight into that? And so it's going deeper into understanding you. And that's, if I allow that, I'm less likely to be triggered and looking for how I can disagree with you. Is just sitting with your truth.
Because it's so easy to jump into judgment. And I know I've done it, and I know others have done it with
we've all done it.
and that practice of asking questions, it happens in marriages. Often my husband will do something and I'll jump to a conclusion, and it's like, and I've learned the hard way not to actually jump to that conclusion, to actually ask a question. Is there a reason why you haven't done A, B, C? Rather than
is there a reason why you haven't put your rubbish bin out?
Is there a reason?
Yeah. Or can I understand? I'd like to understand
why X, Y,
I'd like
Z.
to understand. So then you're actually taking responsibility that at this point you don't have enough information to understand. So I'd like to understand better why this has happened. I'd like to understand better why you made this choice. I'd like to understand better. But if you do that, you have to create that space for somebody, and that takes practice.
It does.
I'm no expert on this. I still get triggered. I still jump down people's throats, but I'm working so hard on not being that person. And the first step of that is awareness that you do it. So you've got to create that awareness, and that can be a bit of a look in the mirror, and that's self-truth. That's the first. I've got 5 truth circles, and the first one is self-truth, and it's holding up a mirror to yourself and realizing your own behaviors and your own reactions and your own triggers and all of that. Do that work first before you start finger pointing. Do that work, and in organizations, creating that culture of candour. Don't finger point. The work is actually everyone in that organization looking at self first. Start with self. Always start with self.
So I just want to wrap this up with just everybody going around about, what are some of the things that you would implement or try to implement in a new organization to make sure that there is a trust and loyalty within that company. Just maybe 3 things. What would you do Elly, first thing? If you were starting a new business, what are some of the things that you would do to set the parameters to get off on the right foot?
Well, the things I mentioned just before, but also allocating budget and time to education and training. Because as a training facilitator and speaker, I know that so many organizations when they're cutting budgets, training is one of the first things to go. And they just do compulsory training, essential or compliance training, or whatever the stuff that they need to tick the box to say we've done that. And too many organizations cut the funding for this stuff, for human communication, for people skills, for awareness, for talking about creating a truth-telling environment and a culture of candor. Like, that's going to take an investment. That's investing in your people and investing in the culture of the organization. So that's probably the one big thing that doesn't often get spoken about, is allocate the money and the time and the budget, because it will pay off in the end. People say, we're so busy being busy, we haven't got time for training. You have. Well, you can if you choose to, because it will help you. It'll help with staff retention. It'll help with attracting the right staff and choosing the right staff in the first place. So that's going to save you time and money. It'll help with productivity and employee engagement. Like, invest in your training and education of your people. Have these hard conversations around creating the culture of candor and truth and trust and honesty. That will pay off in the long run.
Yep, great. Krystyna?
Start the conversation, but most importantly, make sure you're doing the work yourself. Make sure you're having the conversations with yourself, because it all starts right here with yourself. And if you as a leader don't have those skills internally, you can't be a role model for that kind of culture that you're wanting to build, because you won't have the awareness. You won't have the awareness to find the money to make the budget, right?
That's it.
Because there's no problem.
And your blind spot will stay blind.
And your blind spot will stay blind. So do the work.
Absolutely. I would probably just add to that, don't make stuff up. Don't
speak bullshit.
Yes, exactly right. Just, say it like it is. At the end of the day, whether you're the company, the manager, or the employee, if you can't do it, speak up or forever hold your peace, really, because it's going to come back and bite you. And don't overpromise and underdeliver. Don't say you can do something if you can't do it. Don't try to fake it till you make it. Be honest about what your abilities are and what you can do and what you need training on. And, because employers will be a lot happier if somebody's honest about that than some big mistake being made because you've said you could do something and you couldn't do it. So be honest, build the loyalty, by practicing what you preach and doing what you say. That's probably, it seems simple, but it's something that you have to do every single day. And also the other thing I would say, where I think companies have an issue of loyalty and trust, is that they let some people get away with stuff and not the other ones. So then the people are saying, well, how come so-and-so is doing that?
Yeah.
Because so-and-so is a high achiever, let's say, and bringing in some business, but getting away with everything. And so that deteriorates the trust, or the slacker who's not doing anything, and the company's letting them get away with that. And people are seeing, well, so-and-so's not coming in, or so-and-so's doing this, or so, and then all of a sudden, again, that trust and that loyalty that we're all in this together starts to diminish. So those are some of the
consistency.
things.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more.
Oh, yeah. Part 3. We'll do some more in part 3. Excellent.
Well, thanks again so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. We always get so many.
Love these conversations.
Yeah. There's so many things, like what you said, we could talk about. And maybe we should do trust in politics next time.
No.
We have to talk about Donald Trump. No.
Leave that to some other podcast.
Yeah. I think the thing would be find one that is. trustworthy instead of the other way around, who's not. It could do your head in. It could do your head in. Anyway, thanks so much, Elly, for coming on. And I'm sure we will speak to you again.
Beautiful. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
For more information about Every Step and our guests, head to everysteppodcast.com. To be notified of new podcasts, please subscribe via your favourite listening platform. And of course, follow us on social media and direct message us to share your ideas about guests or topics.